Let's talk about how one single animal could literally change the course of human history. Today, we're putting on our detective hats to solve an ancient mystery. A mystery about a creature that's absolutely key to understanding the ancient world. So let's get into it. Long before the invention of the wheel really took off and way before engines started powering our world, there was this one animal that served as the ultimate mobility technology. It was incredibly tough, super reliable, and in the vast, harsh landscapes of the ancient world, its unique skills made it one of the most valuable things a civilization could possibly have. So, what was the big deal? What made this animal such a game changer? Well, it all comes down to geography, especially in places like ancient Iran, where just getting from point A to point B was a massive challenge. And this is where the camel just shines. It was the perfect solution to a huge problem. I mean, look at this list. They could haul heavy loads over enormous distances, they could handle incredibly dry landscapes, and they were fine in both scorching heat and freezing cold. And the real kicker? They needed way less water than any other pack animal. They were, and this is no exaggeration, history's first all-terrain vehicle. Okay, for our investigation to really work, we have to be super specific about who we're talking about. See, not all camels are the same, and the one at the very center of our story was perfectly built for the world of ancient Iran and Central Asia. And this distinction is absolutely critical. We are laser-focused on the Bactrian camel. That's the two-humped one you see on the left. It's totally different from the one-humped dromedary you probably associate with the hot deserts of Arabia. The Bactrian was built for the tougher, colder climates of Central Asia. This is our main character. And that brings us right to the heart of the puzzle, the big question that's had historians and archaeologists scratching their heads for decades. It's a really simple question, but the answer? Well, it's surprisingly complicated. So here it is. Where on earth did humans first figure out how to tame, breed, and use this incredible animal? Answering that, well, pinpointing the origin of the domestic camel is like finding the source code for a technology that would end up connecting entire empires. All right, so our first trail of clues takes us to a major suspect, the region of ancient Iran. There's a specific archaeological site there that holds some of the earliest, most compelling evidence we have for this entire mystery. The place is called Sharq-e-Sokhta. It's in modern-day southeastern Iran. And what's so special about it is that archaeologists digging there found evidence that puts camels right in the middle of a human settlement at an unbelievably early date. So how do they know? Well, it's classic detective work piecing together the clues. First, you find camel bones. Okay, that proves they were there. But then you find things like woven camel hair fibers. Now we know people were using them for products. And the real smoking gun? Finding heaps of preserved camel dung. That's a huge clue that these animals were being kept in pens, managed by humans, not just hunted out in the wild. And the age of all this, it's just wild. We're talking about the 3rd millennium BCE. That is almost 5,000 years ago. Let that sink in for a second. This makes Shahr Sokta an absolutely critical piece of the puzzle. But of course, like in any good mystery, there's a plot twist. As important as those clues from Iran are, they might not be telling us the whole story. To really get to the bottom of this, we've got to zoom out and look at the bigger picture. So, what we have here is basically a great debate between two competing theories. On one hand, you have the Iran-centric theory, which is based on all that solid archaeological evidence we just talked about. But on the other hand, there's a newer theory, this one based on genetics, which suggests that Iran was just one piece of a much, much larger domestication zone that stretched across Central Asia. And this new evidence is coming from a totally different field, genetics. Thanks to whole genome studies, which is basically just a fancy way of saying scientists can now read a camel's entire DNA, they can trace its family tree all the way back. And the genetic story points to a much broader origin across Central Asia, with domesticated camels then spreading into places like Iran. So what's the verdict? Well, it's not that one theory was right and the other was wrong. The modern view, which this quote sums up perfectly, kind of brings them both together. The idea is that while Iran has some of the earliest physical proof of people using domestic camels, the actual process of domesticating them probably happened over a much wider area in Central Asia first. Okay, so we've cracked the where part of the mystery. Now we get to the really big question, why? Why does any of this matter? Well, because the impact this one animal had on the ancient world was, well, it was completely transformative. The camel's legacy is just immense. domestication created the backbone for huge long-distance trade networks that connected Iran with Central and South Asia. And we're not just talking about moving stuff around. This was about moving ideas, creating larger interconnected economic worlds. In fact, you could say these camel caravans were the beta version of the famous Silk Road. And for the people themselves, camels meant security. They provided hair for textiles, hides for leather, plus milk and meat. They were a lifeline. So in the end, you have to think about the camel as more than just an animal. It was a technology, a living, breathing, history-shaping technology that gave humans a new superpower, the ability to conquer distance and brutal geography, fundamentally changing civilization across all of Eurasia. And that leaves us with one last thing to think about. If the camel was the living technology that reshaped the ancient world, what's the modern equivalent that's reshaping ours right now?